Really appreciate it. This is something that I've been looking forward to. I think the way that I actually first found out about kind of who you were and what you were doing, we had a guy, and you might remember him, Alex Townsend. He was like a student assistant on the football team at Harding a few years
Yep,
back.
yep. All eight down.
He, he ended up coming to Fairmont and was like a DB's coach for us for like a maybe a season or two. I can't remember exactly how long he was there, but he would come in and like when we would do our staff lifts, he would come in and lift with us, and he was like really technical with some of his stuff. And I was talking to him, and he's like, yeah, I learned a lot of stuff just being down at Harding. And I'd never honestly, I'm from the Northeast, so I never really heard of Harding University, and he's telling me about it and tell me how good your guys' programs and stuff were. And he's like, man, you should just check out like the strength. Doing a lot of like the summer like kind of collision prep kind of stuff. So we'll get into some of that today as well. But because I've always done a little bit of that, but definitely not to the nuance and the I don't know what you want to call it, the variety of what you were doing. I guess basically from when I first kind of came across your Instagram and stuff. But anyway, like I said, I really appreciate it. I know definitely a lot of my staff and former staff members will watch this for sure. But just to start off, like what is your title? Obviously, I mentioned you're at Harding, but what is your title? What's your responsibilities? What kind of just will give us a lay of the land of what your situation is?
Yeah, so I'm the head strength and conditioning coach here at Harding. Obviously, we're a D2 school, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 16 sports. We're in the Great American Conference. The way that our staff operates, it's just me. I'm the head strength coach. I've been here for going on 5 years now. And after my first semester, the first semester it was just me. After my first semester, I was able to get 4 GA positions to help serve all of our teams. My first semester, I worked with really just football, basketball, and softball, and then I was just kind of observing and learning about how we could best serve the other teams. And then when we got the GAs, we kind of started branching out and then working with everybody. I think it took me about a year, I guess, 2 semesters to really get all the teams involved, really wanting us to work with them. And then really, that was in 2021 when we started. The impact that the coaches talk about, it has been massive, going from no strength coach or just sport coaches doing the strength conditioning to actually having verified strength conditioning coaches work with their teams has been major. The administrative support has been awesome. When I first got here, the head basketball coach, who's in a dual role, he's the head basketball coach and the athletic director. Part of the reason why I wanted to work with basketball, just to kind of build that rapport with him. So that was big time, and he's got our back 100% and helps us out in a lot of ways for sure. Do you want me to kind of go into my background before Harding? Now I can't remember if that was part of the question or not.
Yeah, we'll get to that because I think something that's kind of cool, honestly, is I saw on your bio that you started at Harding in January of 2021. I literally started at Fairmont in February of 2021. So we're literally almost on like kind of the same timestamp in terms of like being at Division II and being in charge of a Division II. And honestly, we're very similar. I have a GA. I'm going to be adding another GA as well. So it's definitely something. And I know I just interviewed a coach, Coach Hernandez, out at an NAIA school out in Arizona, actually. So it's one of those things where I love talking to coaches that, even though you are known in like the strength conditioning world because of what all you're putting out there on social media, like people don't realize like the D2 grind and like what, like, it's just different. And so that's something where like I have the utmost respect for D2, D3, NAIA, high school strength coaches, like for us to be able to just do more with less. And anybody that's listened to any of these calls before, any of my coaches and stuff that have listened to this, like they've heard me say this a million times. So I just want to say, like, again, I just appreciate the fact of us, us D2 coaches out there kind of just grinding through and making things work. Cause I was the same way my first semester at Fairmont, that first spring, it was right after COVID. So we were literally, all of our teams were trying to do like a makeshift spring season. Yeah. So like our football team was playing, our basketball teams were playing, baseball, softball, like it was crazy. And I did have 2 guys that had interned with me previously, and they kind of came down and helped me with the football team. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of respect out there for all those D2 coaches, D3 coaches doing the grind. But yeah, so prior to Harding, obviously I know you played football at Harding, so you could even start with that and just kind of work your way from playing football to Harding to then becoming the first head strength coach. But I didn't realize that was the case, that you were the first head strength coach there. So yeah, start with that.
I played football at Harding. 2013 was my freshman year. 2017 was my last season. That was kind of a grad year for me. We were very successful in terms of, I guess, Harding football at the time. But nothing compared to, I guess, kind of how we've been in the last 3 or 4 seasons. In 2016, we were in the quarterfinals, conference champs. 2017, we made it to the semifinals after starting that season 0-3. So obviously, like, I love Harding football. Like, I love what it was about the first time I heard a recruiting pitch. Just hearing the head coach at the time, who's not the same head coach we have now, talk about culture, talk about like what he wanted from his team, what he wanted from the men coming through his program. Coming out of high school, like, that touched me deep. And so that's today. I mean, that's even what I try to pass on to the student athletes that we have here at Harding now is, lessons that are going to transcend sport so that they can look back on their time at Harding and realize that, like, okay, this had a deeper impact than just, the 4 years I was here. Like, it's impacted me for the rest of my life as a husband and father, spouse, whatever. That's really what we want to be about, is having that deep impact. So, after I left Harding, when I got the call to come back, when I left, I never even really considered coming back to Harding. I was always like questioning, like, why don't they have a strength coach? I don't get it. But when I left, like, my eyes were set on like the big time, big logo, all that kind of stuff. Like, that was my vision for myself. But I got a call kind of right after COVID that the football coach that had been in charge of strength and conditioning, he was going to move on. Harding was starting a master's program in strength and conditioning, which would have been brand new in the fall of 2021. And so they needed somebody to kind of work with that program and serve as the head strength and conditioning coach that oversaw all athletics. And I was just one of the names that had come through the program that understood Harding, that they wanted for the job. So, I obviously ended up getting the job. I don't have a teaching role here, but all of our GAs are in that master's strength and conditioning program. And there's actually a 5-year program where there's an undergraduate and a master's degree, like, kind of combined, that you can get in 5 years, kind of a 3-2 type program. And so that gets us a lot of interns. That helps kind of feed our GA system. And so that's why I was able to get those 4 GAs, was because of that master's program we have. And I think it's always nice. Like, I know I was getting my master's in liberal arts when I was a GA. So I think it's nice to have those GAs be able to come in and actually get a master's degree in the field that they're pursuing. We cover their certification, all that kind of stuff. And so that's kind of like, I guess, why I was able to come back to Harding. Like, I always kind of saw myself as a head strength coach, so it gave me that opportunity. But to be able to do it in a place where I knew the coaches, I knew the culture of the university, I knew the culture of the football team, I knew I kind of had a vision, an aligned vision with the head coach of what it takes to be successful. That was kind of icing on the cake to what made it really, really easy to come back here and start something that had never really been done before. And so in my time here, we've been able to, just last year, we built a brand new weight room, 6,000 square foot weight room. We've continued to enhance like what our GAs get as far as like stipend and tuition waiver and meal plan, all that kind of stuff goes. So there's been kind of continued progress in what we're able to offer our student athletes, strength and conditioning wise, but also what our GA compensation is, which early on was almost next to nothing. And it's still not great. It's still not what we want it to be. But it's every semester, every year, we've been able to get more and more for our GAs.
Yeah, that's awesome. So just to go back real quick to your playing career, when you were there, did you guys, I assume you guys still trained, but I assume it was probably you guys, I guess, ran by like a football coach then or something at the time?
Yeah. So when I came here, I think over my career, I had 3 different strength coaches. They always had like an on-field coaching role though. So my first year, his name's Coach Beeson. He's actually here. He works in our English department now. He was probably the most legit strength coach. Like, he spent a lot of time like trying to know the best things to do. But then he moved out of athletics and into a different role at Harding. And so we had another guy that was kind of an offensive line assistant that also did strength conditioning. And then our last year, our DC took over. His training was really good and really intense. But I mean, it was just more of the old school, just like freaking grind you down to sawdust, which I respect. Like, he'll even tell you, like, yeah, man, what we did was maybe a little bit too much. But yeah, it was always a football coach who wasn't a specialist in terms of strength and conditioning. And that's kind of what every sport did. Like, the softball coach would do their workouts, and it was just kind of a printed workout from what maybe some other school did. So there was never any technique. There was never any good form anywhere. It was just like, this is the exercise. They could coach attitude and effort, but they never really, nobody technically was very sound at anything that they did. And so that's another thing with working with our training staff is like, if you talk with them, the head athletic trainer, it's like the amount that's changed, just injuries wise. Like, there's there's next to no weight room entries now compared to almost every day somebody was coming in with the shoulder pain, back pain, something along those lines. I'm sure you experienced the same thing at Fairmont. I mean, that went a long way really, really quickly.
Yeah, no, honestly, I literally, our former head athletic trainer, he retired, but like when I was there like the first semester, and we had one guy tweak his back deadlifting one day, and I felt so bad. I ran into the training room. I was like, man, I hate that this happened. Our athletic trainer looked at me. He's like, Adam, he's like, you've had one injury, like one injury like this, like all semester. He's like, we used to have 10 of these a day. Like, he's like, this is nothing. Like, this is amazing that they were not having to deal with this. So no, it's definitely crazy. So then, like I said, I saw you went to TCU and Northern Arizona. Like, what were some of the biggest things kind of along your path of getting back to Harvard? Those two roles.
Yeah, and I'll even say this, but like during my undergrad internship, I went to Battleground Academy, which is a private high school in the Nashville, Tennessee area, which is where I grew up. And the strength and conditioning at that high school was better than any I've seen anywhere. I mean, they had a head strength coach who oversaw boys and girls sports, but then they had an assistant for just the boys and assistant for just the girls. The facilities they had, the way that they did their summer strength and conditioning, he kind of followed that Block Zero program for like the rising freshmen, and had a very tiered structure approach from how each year the athletes are going to progress. It was all about like a foundation of movement and the long-term athletic development. Without that experience and me being opened up to like, these are all the things that like athletes need to excel at to get to the next level. And they had a lot of college or, future college athletes at that high school. Without that, like I would have been just a dude that just liked powerlifting and Olympic weightlifting. But that really opened my eyes to what it takes to develop athletes. And then, like you said, I started at TCU as an intern in the spring of 2018 after my playing career. Was fortunate enough to be kept on as a graduate assistant after that semester. And so the reason I chose to be an intern there was because I was going to get to work with football as well as every other sport that they had there. At the time, there was not a split staff like it is now. So I got to work with baseball first thing in the morning. Then right after that, beach volleyball came in. And then we had kind of an open hour where we could train, just do our own thing for a little bit. And then we'd set up for football, and then football would train all afternoon. And usually after that, like track and field would come in. And so I mean, it was, 5 o'clock in the morning until 6 or 7 at night, which that's when I realized like, I freaking love this. Like that was my jam, getting to work with all those different teams. Fortunately, like I would not have been able to do that if they were with me, because she was, like the whole time I was at work, not making any money as an intern, like she was working 2 or 3 jobs depending on the time of year. So it was very quick where I was like, I've got to find a way to move on from this internship. And so that's how the opportunity to stay on as a GA came. I ended up taking over with swim and dive in the summertime and track and field, and also assisting with football through the summer of 18 and the fall and spring of 18-19. And really probably the biggest takeaways, everybody there trained a little bit differently. The way that Zach Dankert did baseball, obviously like he's really well known for that. And that gave me a really good understanding of being able to take those methods that he uses with baseball and how they can work with a number of different sports teams. Because while volleyball trained differently, there was still some inspiration and still some carryover from how Zach trained. And so just seeing those different philosophies, seeing those different concepts, you really kind of get understanding for there's a myriad of ways to train athletes, and be able to steal from a bunch of different coaches was awesome. And then to be around like a high level football program like that, who trained very differently from really any other sport there. I mean, it was like kind of an old school Texas method, like squat, clean, incline, and bench press. Like that was their bread and butter. Very much a linear, periodized approach, but it worked. And they had probably some of the strongest dudes I've ever seen in my life. They were really, really talented, really athletic. The head football coach, Gary Patterson, at the time, he had really high standards. To see how that whole operation worked, I wouldn't change that for anything. So a lot of credit to obviously Zach Dankert, but also Don Summer, the head football strength coach there, for really just giving us the opportunity to learn from both sides of how to do things. And then obviously being a GA there, like you kind of get to I was never micromanaged. Like I was able to make multiple mistakes that looking back on now, like, okay, I wouldn't do things that way anymore. But probably the most formative thing as a GA that I learned was working with the swim and dive staff. And I mean, they just made me feel like I was part of their own. Like they didn't try to micromanage me. Like they took me along to meets, whether it be, going to a training trip in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, or, I was because of that, I wanted to be around that program, even though swim and dive, most people might not really want to be around swim and dive. And so seeing the way that coach empowered me as a really young coach was, it was special. And that's what I try to pass on to our GAs is like, when you find that, that is so rare to have a staff that empowers a young coach that way, that in reality really doesn't know what they're doing. They're just learning.
I know that's cool. And it's funny because that's one of the teams that I actually always put, one of the GAs that I have, I always put them with swim and dive. We don't have dive, but our swim team. And I think part of that is like, they're just a little bit different. They're just like unique athletes. Like they just move a little differently. A lot of them are actually really good athletes. They're just something different. They're just a little bit different. They're not the same as a running back or a linebacker. They're just something different about them. But they usually work really freaking hard. Like that's something that our swim team is really one of the hardest working teams on campus since I've been at Fairmont. They're super consistent. They show up 20 minutes early. Like they're always dialed in. But yeah, they're definitely unique. And it's funny because I went to some of their meets and like, man, that mile, like you said about getting to go to the swim meet, like that, especially at the Division II level, I don't know how it is at the Division I, but that mile, it's like watching paint dry. No offense to the swimmers, but man, the ones that swim that mile, like all credit to them. That stuff is crazy.
Yeah, they know. You'll walk away and you'll come back to like, they're still going. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, the sprint stuff's awesome, especially if it's like a good competitive match and you got some good swimmers going. But man, that mile was crazy. So then I know I saw Northern Arizona. You worked with basketball a little bit there. What all teams, taking it from to the Northern Arizona and then now at Harding? What are the main teams that you oversee? Do you still oversee basketball? Obviously, I know you do stuff with football at Harding, probably primarily. But what are some of the other teams that you've seen and maybe some big takeaways from working with different athletes other than football?
Yeah. So here at Harding, I spend 95% of my time with football and basketball, and then really my time is geared towards making sure the GAs that are with all the other teams that we have, that they're doing things that are safe, effective, that they're growing as coaches. So a really fun part of my job that I actually quite enjoy is like kind of coaching coaches, I guess, because like the best ones, like they're eager to learn, they're open to feedback, they want to know how they can grow and how they can be better. So it's almost like a dream come true, where like you're coaching a mini team of coaches a lot of times. So that's really fun. But like I said, day-to-day football and basketball are my main. And really just starting back as a GA, like there's so much similarities with how I've trained all these student athletes, whether it be a swim and dive team at TCU or a basketball program at Northern Arizona, to football and basketball here. Do you want me to kind of dive in like on those similarities or anything in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I think anything that just like you mentioned there's similarities, but maybe some things that have stood out or some even situations where like you had a growth moment or like a learning moment from working with a basketball player, going from like working with the swim team or working with a basketball player at NAU versus like working out with a lot more football most of the time at Harding. Like just maybe some things that have just kind of stuck out that have.
Yeah, I think
we're going to get to like things that have developed you the most as a coach, but maybe just some things that along that path that have just kind of stood out as big growth moments.
I think one thing that stood out is adapting, like having a lot of options for how I want to program, but then adapting specifically to like what you're actually seeing with that team. So one thing that always comes to mind, I'll share with our GAs often, is like take men and women's basketball in Northern Arizona. There's going to be a lot of coaches that train those teams almost identically because the demands of the sports are the same. But I would say because of the team cultures at the time, and this shows up here at Harding too, I'm just more removed from the NAU scenario, so I can maybe speak more open. The culture is different. The athlete buy-in is different between those two teams. The options that I chose to work with men's basketball was very, very limited. Like we wanted to be good at like 5 or 6 things, and we never really got outside of that because those dudes couldn't handle it from a mental standpoint, whereas with the women, they were able to handle a lot more variety, a lot more, just like, even it could just be like a tempo change, or instead of doing 2 hands, we're going to do 1 hand, and on like a split squat, let's say. They could handle those little changes, whereas the men's team could not. So I think that aspect, whereas like there's all these things that we want to do training wise, not trying to like force certain things on your athletes just because like this is the next natural progression. If the athlete can't handle that progression, then like they need to stay with what they're doing. I think that shows up specifically with maybe how I train football here, because we have 100+ guys. Yes, there's going to be some variety based on position group or age or stuff time to time, but we do a lot of the same stuff year round instead of trying to have a whole lot of variety, so that we're good at things consistently instead of trying to master a million different things. Because like I said, at the end of the day, like we're trying to develop a better athlete, like open up more of their potential, more so than make them better in training, make them a better weightlifter, if that makes sense. I think that shows up in, even the way that I train men's basketball here. Like they do a pretty good job of, I told one of our players this past week that was here training. I was like, because of the guys you guys have coming in, the way that they move, like we're going to be able to do things that we haven't been able to do in the past because they're going to take ownership. They're going to want to do it the right way. They're going to master stuff quickly so that we can move on to more advanced stuff. I guess that's kind of the lens that I look through, is like, once somebody has reached mastery in a movement, then like that's when the next step comes. Hopefully that's kind of clear enough.
No, it's very clear. And honestly, it's something that I think I probably fall victim of. I almost get bored sometimes more than what the athletes do, to where like, we've been doing snatches for 5 weeks. And like, yeah, they still might not be perfect at it, but it's almost like where I'm like, gosh, I just want to yell at them about something different. Like, so I think there's definitely give and take to where I probably need to be more patient with that and really, and I program for the men's and women's basketball team. And I think basically what I'm reading is the same thing of what we get at Fairmont, where the women's team, they don't look at training as just like a side note to like being a basketball player first. Like they accept the whole aspect of it. Our women's team's been amazing the last couple of years, and a lot of that starts with the coaches. The coaches,
sure.
we're both very bought into strength training, and but yeah, you're right. Like our guys this year, we did like regular barbell back squats for like the first block of the fall, and then we started doing like Hatfield, like hand supported safety bar squats, and like the whole like basically the season then starts, and the whole season I'm like, man, should I change it? Should I change it? Should I change it? But like I talked to some of the older guys, and I was like, are you guys good? Like you guys love doing this? Like, that's the best exercise we can do for you guys right now. And they're like, yeah, let's keep doing it. So we literally Hatfield squatted the entire season. And I mean, went from doing regular, like just barbell weight to where we were doing like more speed squats, like once the season started, but we literally speed barbell Hatfield squatted for like 15 to 18 weeks, like through the rest of the season. So it's just one of the things where to me, it's like, you're, going back to what you said, like if it's working and the guys are bought in, like why try to reinvent the wheel and change something, especially in season, when these guys their brains are already just zapped anyway. So kind of getting into like the football side of things. So can you maybe give us an idea of like what you're saying? Because obviously like injuries, like we got older guys that maybe are beat up, got back injuries or hip mobility limitations where like they might not be doing a back squat. They might be doing a belt squat, or they might be doing a split squat or something like that. But can you maybe give us like some things that you're adjusting on, like not necessarily on a fly, like guy comes in sprained ankle, like you're adjusting like that, but you're adjusting program wise to where you are kind of individualizing or adding in some variety to their training program based off position group, based off, age, whatever it may be. Just even if it's just one exercise and you just give it a demo or an example of what makes you make those decisions.
Yeah. So here's one easy example. If we talk about in season, we use a platform called Team Builder. If you're familiar with Team Builder, seems like a lot of people use it. And in season, we'll train Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. On Tuesday, it's kind of our heavier, like we want to be powerful. It's like more strength based and power based stuff versus just like speed and movement based stuff like we might do Thursday. I want like what I think about is I want our guys to lift something fairly heavy on their lower body. That's very general, right? So the way that they do that, they're going to have the choice. And so if they'll have like a tier 1 like power exercise, and they're going to get to choose whether they want to do like a banded trap bar pull, if they want to do hang clean pull, if they want to do if they just want to do a weighted box jump or something, like they're going to have the option to choose. And then that's for the guys that are going to play the most. And then their tier 2, that might be like a heavy bilateral lower body exercise. And I'll give them the option between trap bar deadlift, front squat, back squat, safety bar squat, belt squat, so on and so forth. And it's up to them to choose like what they actually do. Because what I'm looking for is something that's going to like produce force in the lower body, not necessarily like I want them to squat, and in years past, like we've had guys that really, really loved going like dynamic fast trap bar pulls right into trap bar deadlift. And so they might go an entire season without squatting. But the autonomy that they had in their training, I think was really, really beneficial for them. And what we've seen consistently the last 2 or 3 years is they get back into the off season where I'm telling them like, hey, now we're going to front squat, or now we're going to back squat. They're not really losing any strength. And if they are, like, all right, they get 5% of the strength they lost back in 4 to 6 weeks. Like, so what? Like the amount of strength that they might lose through the season, it's not going to impact their performance that much if they do lose any strength. And so we'll do like velocity feedback stuff, jump based stuff, speed based testing through the season to kind of give me feedback on what physiologically is actually changing, I guess.
Yeah, and we've dabbled a little bit with that, not to the extent that you're doing it, but we actually have followed the exact same schedule. Sundays usually like some sort of just recovery thing. Tuesdays like our heavier kind of quote unquote your max effort like West Side Barbell kind of style day, and then Thursdays like our dynamic effort speed day. I like the variety. I definitely like the variety, and I think that you're almost trading. You're trading. I don't know what's the word, like everybody doing the same thing. You're trading a little bit of that for autonomy, which also helps get buy-in, because now the guys are going to get to pick whatever they want to do. So you're going to get a little bit more effort out of that, instead of them doing like, oh, we got to do front squats. No, you can do back squat, you can do trap bar deadlift, you can use split squats, whatever it is, as long as it's heavy and it's achieving. And I think that's really what you were saying there. And I think that sometimes that, especially young coaches, we're so worried about like the exercise selection versus the outcome or the adaptation that we're chasing. And like the adaptation is force output, right? So it doesn't really matter if it's a slow deadlift, a slow squat, or a slow trap bar deadlift, as long as it's, well, when I say slow, I just mean heavy. As long as it's heavy, right? It's slower and heavier versus on Thursday, it might be, like you said, well, we can get into the Thursday, but that might be a little bit of a faster, like Olympic lift, or it might be like a snatch, or just a jump shrug, or like a light, fast power clean, or just a loaded vertical jump or something like that. So what's your Thursday usually look like then in terms of like the options and autonomy that you're giving them?
Yeah, Thursday always makes me nervous because I feel like we don't do anything. But it's kind of the very similar to what we followed the last 3 years, and I don't feel like it's having a negative impact when we've been late in the season, which is why I continue to do it. But Thursdays we'll start, instead of starting in the weight room, we'll start in our indoor facility. Obviously, like that's a blessing, especially when it gets cold. But we'll do like kind of a 3D movement-based warm-up. That's something that I pulled from Zach Dakent, but multi-planar warm-up basically. And then we'll do some speed improvement drills, and typically we'll do like a sprint test. 2 years ago, we would do 20-yard sprints. This past season, I just pulled it down to 15-yard sprints, and it's a fly. So we're measuring the back 10, but it still is like a 20-yard sprint. We'll only do one rep that's full speed. And when I say full speed, like I'll tell them it's like 92 to 95. Like you're not overreaching, like trying to hit a PR. Like we want the PR to come naturally, if that makes sense. I don't want them to take a lot of tension into that run. So anyway, that's the way that we'll start it. And so they'll do one sprint. They'll have some type of like fast plyos. That's where we're getting like the dynamic piece of it on Thursday. And then we'll have a medicine ball throw variation. So if we follow like a 3 or 4 week block, we'll do, kind of like a vertical or horizontal power throw. And then the next block will be more of like a rotational type throw. But the max concentric effort, I guess, is what we're chasing on that. And again, the jumps are just typically a depth drop variation. We come inside and we'll do a very concentric driven post chain exercise. Typically we dance between a couple variations of a hip bridge. It could be like heavy bilateral barbell hip bridge, but it's like kind of fast, or it could be banded hip bridge. Some group of guys will just do single leg barbell hip bridge, it's like a single leg dumbbell hip bridge or a variation. And then any other like upper body, like pump type stuff they want to do, they'll do that on Thursdays. And that's really it. It is not much, and it takes 40 minutes maybe. It probably takes them 5 minutes to transition from outside to inside, and the whole thing's done in 40 minutes. So it's really not very much. But again, I'm testing speed on those Thursdays. On Tuesdays, I'm testing a vertical jump metric, and we're doing velocity outputs on Tuesdays as well. And those still, like through the year, even with doing kind of less and less, like those are staying very consistent. So I guess my lens is like they're staying pretty strong, they're staying fast, they're staying explosive through their jumps. We also obviously do their body weights staying up. Although I feel like I'm not doing enough for those. This is just for the guys that are playing the most. It's, they're at least walking out on the field with the same, abilities each week.
Yeah. No, honestly, it's almost identical like to what we're doing. Like that's literally like our Tuesdays are basically the same thing. We do our vertical jump testing, get their body weight. And I actually take that data and kind of, we kind of do like, I don't know, my former GA, he kind of did some of the data. He's better with the stats than I am. So I don't know if we did Z scores or T scores, but anyway, basically looked at like standard deviations. And then if they were more than 2 standard deviations above or below their normal jump, then I would report that to the coaches and the training staff, say, hey, maybe you want to look at this guy a little bit, decrease what he's doing in practice. Whether that's bulletproof, probably not, but it's something that at least gives an idea. It allows us to report something to the coaches. And then Thursdays, we literally do the exact same thing. We do like a 15-minute speed warm up with some speed drills. And then we don't have an indoor facility, but we have like a strip of indoor turf. We set the timing gates up. We do 2 10-yard dashes and 2 30-yard flies. For the skills, 2 20-yard flies for the bigs. And then that's pretty much it. We go down. I think last fall we did like 4 sets of power cleans, pull-ups, and like a hamstring iso. And that was it. And again, it's kind of one of those things where I feel the same way. It's almost like, I don't know, I'm sure you follow Tony Holler a little bit. Tony Holler, he talks about like, you should almost be uncomfortable with how little you're doing. Like, and it's something like, that 5-6 years ago, if you'd have told me that, I'd been like, there's no way, that doesn't make sense. But now it's almost like you kind of see, like, you really just have to touch on those qualities, every once every 7 days. You gotta hit something, grab something heavy once every 7 days, or move something heavy, move your body fast once every 7 days, and then let the athletes be athletes the rest of the week, because it's definitely something that we had guys. Our tight end, I've said this before because it's kind of a brag, but it's more of a brag for him. Our tight end, senior, herniated disc in his neck, herniated disc in his back, never squatted all year. He did belt squats or like split squats all year. The last game of the season, we did 10-yard dash. He hit an all-time career PR on the 10-yard dash going into the last game of the season. So like, to me, like, that's one of those things where, like, I don't know what we did. I don't know what the biggest stimulus was for him, but something we did. And he wasn't the only one. I mean, we had lots of guys. We had most of our team was getting faster throughout the season, other than the guys that were getting like miles and miles and miles, like our defensive backs and our wide receivers that were just running miles and miles. But most of our guys were getting faster. And again, that's something like, I don't think it was anything secret that we did. I think it's just that we were doing less better. It's kind of the way that I say it. We do less better. Like, and I think that's, it's good. It's good for me to hear from somebody else that's kind of navigated towards that same thought process. So especially that we've arrived at that from different we've gotten to the same endpoint to an extent, but from different starting points. So I love to hear that.
Yeah, the Thursday sprinting has always made me nervous, just because like the last thing you want is for somebody to feel tight or for that to be a residual through Saturday. But I'll say this too. This season we're actually not going to do that. Again, for the guys that play the most. Because like I feel pretty confidently that for all those guys, like we'll use Catapult GPS too. They're getting that in the game on Saturday. And for the majority of them, besides like the O&D linemen, they're also getting that in our special teams practice. So I'll probably be a little bit more selective with like, okay, this group of guys that isn't doing special teams because they're like a baller offensively or defensively, like they're going to get that stimulus in practice either Tuesday or Wednesday. instead of asking them to do that on a Thursday. And a lot of times it's really the Thursday morning group that makes me nervous. We'll train at I guess it's 6 a.m. 10 a.m. is another group, and then 1 o'clock is the last group. It's one of those three, and it's always just like they're probably dehydrated first thing in the morning. It's a lot of times it's kind of chilly and cold. So are we warming up enough? And so again, we've done that the last 2.5 seasons. I started doing that halfway through the 2022 season, and it's good. But I'm also thinking like, okay, if I'm continuing to be nervous about it, like we haven't had any injuries, but I just feel like there's probably a better way to structure it. So that'll be what we follow for this 2025 season.
Yeah, and it is good that you said that, because that is something that we just started doing it last year. Was the first year we did it, because last year we had a new head coach, and he's bought into like wanting our guys to be faster, and so it's something that we definitely did, and we didn't have GPS, so we got GPS halfway through the season last year. We got Connects on, and honestly, I'm still learning a lot about that, so I might have a follow up question regarding that, but that's something that me and my GA that's leaving, we were literally just talking about this earlier this week, because it's like, if we are seeing that our guys are hitting, especially our skill guys, if we are seeing that they're hitting 90+% of their max velo at some point during Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday's practice, is it absolutely necessary for us to sprint them on Thursday? And that's something that, like you said, I would hate for somebody to pull a hammy or a quad or a groin or something, doing a 10-yard dash or a 10-yard fly 48 hours before kickoffs, just for the sake of trying to hit something when they've already hit it earlier in the week. So that's definitely something that, now that we do have some of that data, we will have to definitely be a little bit more aware of that. I think the thing with me, though, that kept me wanting to do it, or has me continue to want to do it, is our guys just get really, like, they get excited about it. Like they get now, you're right, that 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock group, maybe not so much, but the other groups, like they're usually very excited, very hyped up. And it's almost become part of my culture and my identity for our guys. We did it for soccer last year. Soccer was the first year that we had our soccer girls sprint during the season as well. Friday mornings, they would come in. That would be like their very similar to football's lift. There would be a very a shortened lift, sprints, some power cleans, maybe like a split squat or something like that. And then they don't play till Sunday. So kind of the same idea. And just seeing our athletes like buy into the idea of like getting faster is probably cooler than adding 10 pounds to your squat, like, because it actually translates to the game more. That's something where, like, I saw a little bit of a change with our athletes' mentality in terms of like getting faster, became more important, and that became a little bit more bought in versus just always trying to move more in weight, because I think there is a point of diminishing return to an extent. So, but yeah, there's definitely like a little bit of like, as a strength coach, you're always kind of like got a little bit of that sweat rolling down your back of like, man, if our starting running back does something right now on a Thursday at 7 o'clock in the morning, is that worth losing him for Saturday? So definitely something to toe the line. So getting into the GPS stuff, like what is something that maybe we don't necessarily need to even get into like exactly what metrics you guys are looking at. I think everybody's mainly looking at kind of the same ideas, like how much time or distance are you spending in high speed, kind of moderate speed, and then low effort, low speeds. But what is maybe something that when you guys first got it, that was like the most eye-opening thing for you, or the things that you first dialed into first that you've continued to do now, or maybe what are some things now that you do differently this year that you didn't do previously years?
Yeah, early on, we had in the first season we were here in 2021, and every year we've just gotten more systems, and it's really just me, because usually, I mean, you know how it is. It takes a while to learn how to manage all that data. So I might use a GA or an intern to like download the data. That'll save me a little bit of time, but it's up to me to be able to know what that stuff means and communicate it to the head coaches, all that kind of stuff. The first year, man, I wanted my reports to be very specific and precise, and try to tell exactly the sport coaches like what this meant for this player. Fortunately, in our situation, like our coaching staff has not changed very much, and really our practices don't change that much. So like I could go out there on a Tuesday in week 1, a Tuesday in week 6, and it's gonna be the same. Like, to be honest with you, I really don't even need to look at the metrics, because I know what it's going to be. The things that do change, obviously, are like the demands on the guys in the game, and what their training demands from me are going to be. So I've always kind of got an idea of like, this is how much volume that I'm expecting to see out of this period of time. And I just kind of use it as a check and a balance now. I know it's an expensive thing to use that for, but I guess that's what I do it for. And like I said, like I'll give like speed zones for a lot of our speed training, instead of expecting every single week to be 100%. like our guys just started back last week. What I told them for their buildups was I want you to be like 92%. So you're loose, relaxed, finishing tall and fast, but you're not trying to overreach and have a PR today. And so I'll take the GPS and just compare that to see how close are they to that 92%. Most of the time, surprisingly, our guys do a pretty good job of touching those numbers. And then each week, like this week, we're at like 92, 95, and then over the next couple of weeks, we'll go 95 plus. So I want them to back that up without me having to pull the timing gates out, since we're just doing kind of build-ups as we kind of get back into it this summer. So that's kind of the, I guess, the top speed metric. With in-game stuff, like I'll look at like distance that's greater than a walk, and that'll kind of map out our conditioning for June and July. I want to try to mimic 2 to 2.5 times whatever the distance per walk is going to be, or whatever the distance greater than a walk is going to be in those weeks leading up to fall camp. Fall camp, especially the first week of fall camp, I've got very little control of how much they practice and how much they do. But when we have it on them for their walkthroughs, and their practices, it is really challenging to replicate the sheer volume demands of that. Like I don't feel like I'm able to do that. But if you think about the accelerations and decelerations, we can do a pretty good job of preparing them for that. So that'll kind of play a role in our speed and agility stuff, or the game deceleration stuff that we do. And then in season, if a guy has a substantially higher load than is normal, that's the conversation I'll have with the sport coach, and say like, hey, this guy has did a little bit more than normal. Like we probably need to take a little bit off him at some point. And again, like the coaching staff that I work with, like and most of the time they're like, yeah, we know that, so that they're already intuitively thinking without even needing the report from the GPS. Like this guy did more in this game than he ever had, whether it be snap counts or distance, something like that. We're going to have to take off of him this week. So I don't know if that was a good answer or not, but those are just some thoughts, I guess.
No, it was a good answer. And that's kind of where I'm at too, because we didn't have it for fall camp last year. So I'm kind of like, I've been looking, I think we got it week 5 or week 6 of the season. So I'm kind of just trying to like look at that data and just kind of make an assumption of like, what would fall camp be like? 120% of that, 150% of that, like, and then we started our summer training kind of officially this week, but we've had some guys doing stuff the past 2 weeks. But that's basically how I'm doing it across our whole week of lifting, running, conditioning, all of that, like trying to build up volume throughout the summer. And I think the easiest thing for me to do is, I think the high speed volume is the easiest to get, because that's just like, just go sprint, go play, go do your sport. It's like all the extra accumulated, like you said, anything higher than a walk, but that's less than like a 60% jog. Like we just kind of call that like work yardage. Like that's where like guys will accumulate like 2,000 yards of just like jogging around at 6 miles an hour. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so that's one of those things where to me, like, it's hard for me to like program that stuff in. Like, cause that's like, do I just tell guys to go run a mile? Like, what do we do? Like, how do we get that in there? And I think personally part of it for me is like, that's somewhere almost some of these guys are going to have to do some of that on their own with just their own like skill work that they're doing whether they're home for the summer, they're doing it in their backyard, or they're going to their field. And, if they're an offensive lineman, literally just getting down in their stance and firing out of their stance for 30 minutes on their own. Like because otherwise, like there's really no way that I'm not going to program, go run, 6,000 or 2,000 yards of 6 mile per hour running. Like that's just, I don't know. That just seems counterintuitive to me with all the strength and power stuff that we're trying to do. So it's kind of a weird, that's the weird thing where I'm at, is like, I'm worried about the total volume, especially wearing cleats. Cause that's one of those too, is like these guys might go all summer and they might only wear cleats 1 or 2 days out of the week when they're home, like training remotely. So it's like, are they going to just have the tissue capacity built up when camp starts to wear cleats for 6 days in a row for 2 hours at a time, and just the amount of volume and wear and tear. So that's where I kind of get a little nervous, but we'll see how this summer goes. I mean, we've actually been pretty good about our main guys staying relatively healthy during camp. So I'm kind of, I don't know. I'm pretty confident, but it's also one of those things where, going back to like the sprinting thing, it's just like all it takes is one guy to like one key player to like have something go down. And it's like, man, we try to dot all our I's and cross all our T's, and it still happened, like back to the drawing board. So,
yeah. And I think I'm fortunate that obviously I played in the same offense that we have now. Defense has been the same the whole time. Like I know And I had a discussion with one of our offensive coaches before spring practice. I'm like, look, like we know what's going to happen in this position group. Like we know they're going to have some groin tightness, possibly a hamstring thing. Like this is what I'm doing to help prepare them for that in our training leading up to practice. If there's anything that you can think of that like might, reduce that shock, because like every year, like these are the two things that pop up with your position group because of what y'all do. And you can't argue that. Like it's you see it every time. And so what I gave them was like a very specific, like in addition to their normal warm up, this is the stuff you need to do before every practice. And there was a lot of soft tissue stuff, a lot of mobility. They probably weren't warming up as intentional as they could have been anyway. And so this past spring practice, I mean, it took us a few years to finally kind of get a recipe, but the players were aware of it. Like, hey, if I don't warm up well, like I'm exposing myself to some groin or hamstring stuff. The coach was aware of it. I was aware of it. And they didn't have any through all of our spring practice. So and that had nothing to do with GPS. It just had to do with looking at what had happened in the past and trying to prepare for that. So that's just made me think of that.
Yeah, no, and that's one thing that I always kind of, I don't know, laugh, shake my head. I don't know what the right. I kind of get mixed emotions on is like, we go out, like we don't, because of just the staff that we have, like I can't always be out to the field for stretch. I can't always send the GA out to the field for football stretch. But so a lot of times it's led by one of the football coaches, and like I think our warm up, our stretch is like a really good stretch. Warm up should get guys warmed up. But if you go out there and like if I'm not leading it, guys are like we're doing like A skips or something, and guys are literally just like doing like basically marches, like they're like especially the bigs. The bigs love to just like half-ass a warm up. But the one thing that I always say is like they're half-assing a warm up, but they've already been out there doing like the early pre-practice stuff for like 30 minutes. Like we should probably just do a good stretch then, and then just say heck with like the stretch before practice, and just actually get them warmed up for like the pre-practice like indie period that they're gonna do. So that's something where like that definitely would be a good conversation for me. That like now that you say that, that's what I think about. And like one of the things that we saw, like the wide receiver that we had, that he covered the most distance of anybody on the team this year. Like a lot of his game day volume happened before the game ever even started.
Yeah, that's classic.
Because he would go out, and he would do kick return stuff. He would go out and do like 7-on-7 stuff. He would go out, you know what I mean? He'd go out there and running routes, and then he would go back out and do a warm up, and then he'd go back. Like, so he's covering like a mile or two. I don't know exactly what the numbers were, but it's like he's running like a mile before the game ever even starts. And it's just like maybe there's a better way to go about doing that. Like, are we really going out there and fatiguing our most reliable wide receiver before he even actually goes against an opponent? So
same deal, man. You wonder, you get like I'm the same situation, man. We had a DB, he goes out there, one of the first guys out there, returns kicks for 30 minutes, then goes warms up with the DBs. Before the end of the first quarter, he's at a load that he's never seen before, and we wonder why he cramps right after halftime. Like, yeah, he's doing stuff, he's doing more than he's ever done. He hasn't seen that in a year, and it's we don't have the time as strength coaches to prepare them for the 2.5 hours where he goes and sits in a cold locker room, comes back out and runs again. Like,
I agree. So real quick before to just wrap up the GPS stuff, is there anything that you guys are looking at for your O-line and D-line that you feel like stands out, like as a metric that's better than just like looking at speeds or distances or anything? Like any of like, I know we have Connects on. I don't know how Catapult is with like the anaerobic power stuff, or like we look at exertions as well, like Excel decels, but again, like sometimes I don't know if that's undershooting or undervaluing what the bigs are doing. How do you kind of monitor what they're doing?
I don't. In fact, like instead of having the Catapult on multiple O linemen, I have it on one, the one that I think is going to do the most. And we've had it like because they were like probably our best players. I had it on 2 DNs and 2 D tackles this past season. But their demands besides the DNs, their practice demands were identical. And the DNs are going to run a little bit faster in game, obviously. But that was really it. Like if there's other stuff I should be thinking about, I'd be happy to consider it, but I don't know how much I would change. I guess, I don't know. I don't want to, like, I try to limit the things that are a distraction too. So I don't know what I should be looking at in that area, I guess.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think the reason that our coach has kind of been worried about it is we've had some depth issues at often, especially on the offensive line. Like this spring, I think we had eight offensive linemen on the whole team this spring. So like even when we're going through practice, I mean, we're basically rotating guys through it, and like you got offensive linemen and that are starters that are on the first team and they're on the third team. So it's like they're basically getting double reps. So it's one of those things. I mean, luckily, again, no one got hurt. No one got too banged up. But it's kind of one of those things where he's asking me, like, what metrics we can look at. I'm like, maybe just plays. Like, just look at plays or just, total reps, like in practice, whatever it is. That might be the best factor for your O-line and D-line because more so for your O-line. For your D-line, I agree. Like, the D-ends, for sure, they're definitely going to cover more yardage and be out in space a little bit more, hit some higher speeds and things like that. But yeah, I agree. The O-line, D-line, when interior D-line is a little tricky of a metric to kind of pinpoint.
Yeah, there's a metric that Catapult has that's very deceiving. It's called contact load. That for a while, myself and our D-line coach thought that like it was actually measuring like physical contacts, but come to find out that like our slot running backs ended up having the highest contact load. We were like, there's no way that's possible. Come to find out, it was just like when they get in kind of a stance position, so our slots just kind of get like an athletic stance, like hands on their knees position before they take off. Once you get in your stance and hold it for a certain set amount of time and then take off by like coming up like that, it registers a contact because it associates that movement with the thing that an offensive or defensive lineman would do when they come off the ball to strike the person in front of them. So for the first year, I was like, oh, contact load, that's awesome. And I was like, why the heck of our slots? They don't even hit every play. And so that would have been one, if anybody can actually measure that. And I'm sure there's like some helmet stuff that can actually measure that kind of stuff. Like that would be cool. Because that would be something to consider, I guess, is like head contacts or even arm contacts. But what you said about just total reps seems to be the most logical one.
Yeah, right. I know we're kind of getting, I like to keep this around an hour, but I do want to talk real quick too, because I know it's something, like I said, when I first came across your Instagram account, I really loved, I mean, we've always done like some tumbling, some front rolls, back rolls, like things like that, even like some pummeling, like just wrestling kind of stuff. But just, can you kind of just maybe talk about like the genesis and kind of how you've structured your implementation for your collision prep and even some of your like open-ended, like speed and agility stuff that you guys do?
Yeah, you bet. You're lucky that last weekend I actually gave a little clinic talk on both of these things, so it is fresh on my mind.
Cool. Is that something that we can find? Is that going to be posted somewhere?
Yeah, do you want me to just if I can share my screen, I'll just pull my slides up, and that might help explain some
stuff. Absolutely. Let's do it. Yeah.
And I've got at least I've got 20 minutes.
Okay.
If that's good. I don't mind going a little bit long.
Yeah, no, that's completely.
I'm not sure. Let me pull my slides up real quick. And so really the I guess the genesis of the contact prep stuff was when I was at that high school internship. You able to see my screen?
Yep.
Do you see me or do you see the slides? Do you know?
I see the slides.
Slides. Awesome. Okay. So kind of when I was at that high school, they would do tumbles and crawls. I think this was 2016. They would do tumbles and crawls and all that kind of stuff. And that was before my junior year of football. And so I did that kind of stuff all summer long. And then when I came back to football practice, like everybody looked at me like I was like the silliest person ever. But I would do that stuff before our practice started. Like I would roll around on the ground, I would tumble, I would crawl to get my shoulders warmed up. I always had kind of neck and back issues, and it made me feel better before practice. And so it was just part of like what I like to do naturally and stuff that I learned that these high school kids were doing from the time they were like 14 years old. And so I always knew that like there's a place for this when I have my own teams. And I would say that when I ended up having swim and dive, with the swim and dive crew, like I would do all kinds of crawl variations. And so I think at that time I found a YouTube channel that had all these different animal crawls, animal walks, all this kind of stuff. And I had this entire warm up that was all that. And so we'd spend 10 minutes doing these goofy horse crawls, scorpion crawls, elephant crawls, gorilla crawls. And so I think that was kind of the foundation of it. And then before I came over to Harding, years later, and I did a little bit of stuff with basketball, like crawling, all that stuff when I was at Northern Arizona. And we would do some like falling to ground and then standing back up type stuff with our basketball players. Before I came to Harding, that's when I guess I learned about Andy Ryland. And Andy, for a long time, worked for USA Football. And he would always post rugby stuff. And I saw I guess just the possibilities of like what you could be doing if you were preparing. And to me, it just made sense to, if you're going to prepare guys, like you need to prepare them for the demands of the game they're actually going to see. And so kind of what I talked about at this conference is like, whether you realize it or not, like you're going to have guys that don't love the physical nature of being an athlete. The thing that Andy Ryland says is a third of your team loves physicality all the way down to a third of your team just absolutely hates it. So exposing them psychologically can be super beneficial. So we'll use like a 4-stage progression. Stage 1 is the stuff that we're doing like year round through the lens of like how that prepares us for the physical nature of football. And then 2 and 3 is where we spend the majority of the time. The differences between stage 2 and 3 is stage 2, we're going to have high force, like we're pushing at somebody, but we're not actually hitting. And it's not really competitive. And then stage 3, it's going to get pretty competitive, and we're going to have some pretty heavy contact battles. So stage 1 is going to be all the neck stuff, the animal crawls, all these different variations. I'll send you these slides so you can kind of get a version of it, because we've got some videos on there. Then stage 2 is that's when you're going to start introducing a partner, and kind of putting the athlete that's working in dynamic situations. There's just a number of different like head and shoulder positions that I think, instead of just get on the ground and crawling with a buddy, like I'm going to be very intentional about fitting your shoulder into this guy's shoulder, making sure your shoulder feels like it's in a good, comfortable position. You're actually applying pressure with your shoulder and your head, so you're getting the proper muscles engaged in that position. So you're just slowly exposing them to the different positions that they're going to see when they get on the field. And then as they get into stage 3, like we're actually going to do things where they have to initiate various contact positions, and then use that partner manipulation. So kind of like the pummeling stuff you talked about, we've tried some of that. This is when like the hip and the line battles and stuff will come in. And then finally in stage 4, the case that I make is like this should probably be done with the football coaches in football practice, like learning tackling drills, or like almost like block destruction type drills if you're a D lineman, or blocking drills if you're offensive lineman, or ball carrier, like breaking the tackle drills ideally. But there's some things that I think we can do that is kind of an open, chaotic environment that also allows like for it to flow seamlessly into practice. So I guess the general idea is expose your athletes to a number of different things that reduce the shock of that third or fourth practice, where they just go from like not really doing anything except for just traditional neck exercises to like full on head to head, shoulder to shoulder tackling drills. And I mean, I can't remember. Did you say you played football in the past, or?
Yeah, I play football, and it's as you're saying that, it's kind of funny just to think about the fact that like, growing up you play football, and even like as little as Pee Wee football, you literally don't put helmets or shoulder pads on for 9 months out of the year, and then day one you're just going out there. I mean, yeah, you might have 2 or 3 practices where it's just helmets, then just shoulder pads, but it's like you're literally starting to just collide with people like at 7 years old or 17 years old, like without doing anything all summer. So it's it's actually kind of crazy that we let people play as violent of a sport as football without this kind of stuff being almost mandatory.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know. I could talk about that kind of stuff all day, but I mean, I have like permanent neck issues probably for the rest of my life because of, I played football since I was pretty young. But like, is there things that could have been done better to prepare me for that? Maybe. Should I have been taught to like hit with the crown of my head all the time? Like that's a whole nother discussion. The whole thing with rugby that is so unique is that like with football, you can just throw your head in there, but with rugby, if you throw your head in there, then like you're going to end up with a massive cut on your head and you might be out for the game. So the level of precision that they have in rugby with the contact, they're very, very intentional with how they initiate contact and finish and all that kind of stuff. I do believe that like the nature of football, like we are going to have to get more towards that model in the next 10 15 years, for safety, but also because like you're going to create better tacklers that way. You're more accurate tacklers, not just tacklers, but like ball carriers initiating contact. like running through people effectively, all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'll definitely share these slides with you.
I was gonna say it's almost like they don't like when I was a kid, like they almost taught you. I wrestled too, so it's one of those things where like when I was a kid, they taught you basically a rugby tackle, which is almost like a double leg takedown. And
Yeah.
now if you watch the game of football, it's basically just guys just running upper bodies trying to run into it and knock each other over, as opposed to actually like wrapping somebody up and tackling them around the waist or around the hips. Like, so it's definitely interesting. Like I said, I'm glad we kind of went down this rabbit hole. But yeah, if you want to send this to me, I'll definitely share it with all my staff, and we'll kind of, because we have a similar, I kind of have a similar model. It's probably not as structured as this, but it basically goes to where you're basically touching somebody versus then you're kind of, a yard away from each other and kind of starting everything. So I like the idea of having it to where it eventually gets you to where you're basically doing everything but playing football essentially. So I like that idea of kind of having a structure. So like I said,
this other one here is just like, I actually kind of stole that 4-stage thing for the battles, but this is actually from Aaron Wellman's book, Complete Conditioning for Football. Cam Joss was on that one too. And it's just a 4-stage progression from like open change like basic change direction mechanics to open reactive agility drills that kind of look like, regular football drills without shoulder pads.
Yeah.
And so again, with this one, you can just kind of scroll through and kind of get an idea, see a few videos, kind of get the idea behind everything that we were doing. Introducing, obviously, like my stance, my opinion is like you've got to have like an open, chaotic environment that exposes the athletes to the things that are actually hard about the game. If you don't do that, then your drills aren't going to carry over like they could. So another scenario, my whole playing career, like I can't really remember very many practice drills that really looked like what I was seeing in games. And the common theme was like you don't really get good until you get in-game experience. Well, like, should it really be that way? Or like should a football coach create practice in such a way that exposes them to those game scenarios so that they're prepared for it when they first see it, to eliminate struggling in their first game or first appearance or whatever.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's kind of funny because two things come to mind, and I don't know, I want to be careful how I say it, because one of them, when I was a kid, and I'm sure when you were a kid too, I think we're kind of around the same age, but there's a game that we used to play that's probably an insensitive thing to say now.
Yeah, spear the guy.
Yeah, there was one person with a football and everybody was trying to tackle him. And you want to talk about like the guys that were the best at that when we were like 8, 10, 12 years old were the guys that ended up being our running backs, our wide receivers, and our DBs on our football team. And the guys that sucked at it ended up being our offensive and defensive linemen. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where like that's as open world agility, change of direction as you can possibly get. And kids don't even realize that they're doing it. But then they go to football practice and they're doing this drill that is a football drill, but it doesn't actually, like, they're stepping over bags, but they're not actually having to react to anybody else. And that's something that I've always kind of thought of, like, and the other thing that kind of makes me come to mind is one of the guys that is from here in Morgantown. He played baseball at WVU and played in the big leagues for, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, something like that. Really good guy. But when I used to work at the private gym here in town, and he would do like hitting lessons and stuff over there. And he was very anti, even though he kind of had to do it, he was very anti like hitting off a tee or like doing all these hitting drills. He's like, when I'm playing in a baseball game in the big leagues, he's like, I got somebody throwing 95 mile an hour at me. He's like, that ball's not sitting on a tee. He's like, so why would I practice hitting off of a tee? Now, I think there's, when you're working with a young kid and you're just teaching him like, basic kind of motor patterns of swinging a bat. Like, I think there's some definitely some benefit there. But his logic to me makes sense. Like, why would you do something that doesn't, if you want to get better at your sport, why would you do anything that's so far removed from your actual sport? So like, kind of what you're saying. So one or two last questions here, if you got a minute, because I think you kind of alluded to this, but you didn't mention it. And I think that's just kind of like a humility thing, but obviously you guys won the national championship 2 years ago, correct?
Yes.
2023 national championship.
Yes.
Kind of talk us through that. Like what, because for us, we're definitely not as much of a football powerhouse as what you guys are and have been. But for our thing, it's like we want to win a conference championship. Like everything for us is kind of like, if we have a successful season, it's going to be winning a conference championship this year. Talk about like what it means to be kind of a part, like your role as that culture of being part of a winning culture. What is our role as strength coaches in terms of like being part of a winning culture?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is alignment with the vision of the head sport coach. And that's not just us as strength coaches. Like that is with the athletic training staff. That is with everybody that has any influence on your student athletes. And I think what we do better now, that might have been the difference between us kind of getting over that threshold and even having a chance to play for national championship in 2023, was alignment behind that from an athletic training standpoint, between us, between our academic support, and like our coaches recruiting really good players. Like that's probably
Right.
nobody wants to admit it, but like you've got to find the people that fit the vision, because the vision in the locker room probably is maybe more toxic than we realize. So like everybody that comes in, that's a transfer or a first year guy, like they've got to align with that vision. And I think that's in 2023 what made it special. In 2024, like we thought we had it, like we thought we were going to go back to back until we didn't, like it was players, coaches, training staff, in lockstep, pushing the same direction, fighting for our culture every day. I think like a thing that Coach Simmons talks all the time, and it's a thing that you hear often, is culture is like ever changing. Like every day, it's a little bit different. But I do believe like having like that ideal vision for who we want to be is kind of at the focal point. And the fact that here at Harding, like we're a Christian school, we're all unified with our football team about like this idea of honor God. Like that's our slogan, that's our phrase, like that's our thing. And I do think we get a lot of people of really high character here that are aligned with something bigger than just ourselves. So if you spend any time around our program, you're going to hear about a number of things, but something that you'll hear often is like winning is not what's most important to us. There are things bigger than winning. Obviously, honor God is the foundation of that. But Coach Simmons talks about wanting to have like the best culture, and we define what that looks like. We define what that means in different scenarios. Some people don't love this mentality, but like it's almost that like how you do anything is how you do everything mentality. Like we want to be like really, really good, as good as we can be in the classroom, because we think that's going to carry over. We want to be really, really accountable with how we even pick up trash on campus. Like this might be silly, but like the first meeting of every season, when we have all these new faces, new coaches, whatever, like Coach Simmons is going to talk about a number of things, but he's always going to hit on like when you cross the road here on campus, you don't have your headphones in and you don't lumber around and take your time as you cross the road. Like you're going to hustle across and wave at the person. And you're going to make the sacrifice and not hold up their time, because it's not about you. It's about those around you. It's almost that idea of like just a bunch of sacrifice. And so I think when you're in a team, part of a team that takes accountability that seriously, takes personal accountability and team accountability that seriously, you're giving yourself a really, really good chance to be successful. When you bring the right people in that have the right level of talent, really special things can happen. And then honestly, like you got to be lucky as far as like injuries go. These past 2 seasons, like we have had, like everybody, we've had injuries with key guys that have missed time. But we've also had maybe better depth in those places than before. And that has helped us. Like this past season, we were 12-2. One of those games was just kind of a fluke. Like we weren't who we were. And the other one, it was just a reality check that like you got to show up and be your best every single day in the playoffs. So like, year in and year out, like that's I guess kind of the thoughts that I have.
Yeah, no, I mean, and everything you're saying, like it completely just fits with what we want to do. It's at the end of the day, it is what, it comes down to the players that you have. That's definitely an aspect of it. And then I actually had that as like a potential follow-up question about the fact that you guys are a Christian school, and just how often are you guys dealing with kids? Like, I mean, obviously since our new head coaches come in, we've actually had probably less guys get like kicked off the team than ever before since I've been at Fairmont. But is that something that, like, I don't know. I'm sure you never recruit, and I never recruit, but I even see kids come in on recruiting visits, and like they have their headphones in and their hood up while they're walking through the weight room on a recruiting visit. And to me, like that's just like, if I see a kid get out of the car and I'm the coach and I'm recruiting, I'm just telling him to get back in his car and go home, because like you don't even seem like you're excited to be here. So like, is that something that you feel like, even just in general, like recruiting wise, like obviously with the faith based, being a Christian based school, like, is that something that you guys, mentioned getting higher character kids, but is it like you're just getting even less like low character kids? Like your kids are coming in with higher character, but you're just even like before they even get to campus, you're just not getting low character guys. Or are you still getting some of them sometimes?
It is really hard to be successful here, from academic standpoint, from expectations of the university standpoint. Like our guys have a curfew, and you can't be out of your dorm past a certain time. You can't have females in your room. They have to go to maybe I should say they get to go to chapel every day. That's at 9 a.m. And if you don't have if you use too many chapel skips, then you're going to be in trouble, whether it be losing financial aid or something like that. So I mean, it is hard to be successful here. So naturally, that expectation with the really, really, really high standards of the program weeds out a lot of those issues. And we have gotten to a point in the last 5 to 7 years, that like we don't have to worry about those things because the players take care of it themselves.
Yeah.
But when I played here, it was not that way. Like we were having the university was kicking players out because they were turds, because we kind of had to take a chance on some people. When I say we, at the time, I was a player.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
And I mean, I think that's there's this video of our old head coach, probably 2011, that he basically communicated this is it was right after he took over. It was right as we were switching to the flex bone offense, and he said this is going to be our identity, and he said it around the idea of honor God, and this is who we're going to be, and this is our vision. We're going to have excellent facilities. We're going to have excellent this. We're going to have excellent academics. Da 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 da. And he made an effort to put a lot of coaches in the room to uphold that, and then those coaches recruit the kind of people that were going to uphold that. And so it didn't happen overnight. This was his vision for the team 13, 14 years ago. And it is, in the last 10 years, we've had as much success of almost anybody in the country football wise. So it starts there, and it's trickled down, and it might not happen. It's not going to happen overnight, but it might not happen in 4 or 5 years either. It's just that now is, I guess, the time, and now we're just trying to find a way to fight to stay on top and continue to be better at what we do.
Right. Yeah. Well, like I said, I follow you, and I know you're posting a lot of stuff from other teams. It's not just your football team. A lot of your teams are very successful. I think your men's or women's basketball team had a good year. Softball team's usually pretty solid. Baseball, I saw, went to the region this year. So, I mean, you guys are definitely doing some things right down there. So real quick, one last question, just because that is part of this is trying to help my young coaches, if you have time for it, is what's your biggest piece of advice to young GAs, interns, up and coming coaches? What is something that you feel has helped you or should help them, or what is that?
Yeah. I think thinking about yourself less will take you so far. Being willing to do the extra work, put the time in. Most of the people that are in their shoes are going to be in their first few years in strength conditioning. Whether you like it or not, it takes a lot of time and skin in the game. It takes willingness to do the work that nobody else wants to do. Believe it or not, you really got to love this stuff if you want to do it. We make fun of them now, but when I was a GA, there was a full-time guy that was always complaining. He was like, man, I can make $50,000 doing anything but this, because that was just kind of his personality, was to complain. But you've got to realize that this might not be for you. If I heard that as a GA, I should have been like, yeah, right. This is exactly what I would have been doing. There's a lot of people, if they hear that as an intern or a GA, they might be thinking okay, maybe there is something else out there. If you're thinking that, then that's probably true, to be honest. Go find something else. But if you feel like this is something that you love, that you can see yourself doing for a long time, if you're willing to give up your time, your energy, for the improvement of those around you, and you're willing to pour into your athletes, from a culture standpoint, from all the things that we've been talking about standpoint, the return that you'll get if you're able to be in a place as long as you and I have, when they come back and they say like, hey, thank you for XYZ. This is how you made a difference in my life. That is what will fuel you without a doubt. So hopefully that's actionable.
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. And again, it's one of those things where I literally just had an intern meeting actually right before we started this call. And that was kind of one of the things that got brought up of just, realizing that, we should all be in this for the benefit of somebody else, not for our own benefit. And if you're in this to chase money or a logo or something, like you're kind of in there getting in it for the wrong reasons. So definitely something to pass on. Like I said, Coach, I really appreciate this, man. This has been definitely one of my favorite ones that we've done for sure, because of just the knowledge that you have. And again, like I said, it's just being able to connect with other D2 coaches that are kind of in the same, we're kind of in the same era of our career and kind of in the similar boat. Like I said, so much respect for D2 strength coaches out there, regardless of how successful their programs are, just because of just the work that we have to put in. So I really appreciate it. If you can send that PowerPoint over to us, we'll definitely take a look at it. But like I said, I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Once we get off, I've got it pulled up. I'll just share it with you.
Awesome. All right. Well, Coach, I really appreciate it. I'll get this put on YouTube and I'll send it over to you as well so you can pass it along.
Yeah, man. Thanks a ton.
Yes, sir, Coach. Thank you.
Have a good summer. Good luck.
Yeah, good luck to you guys too. Thank you.